Spectator columnist and financial journalist, graduate of Churchill College, Harry Clinch, joins me now in the studio. Hi, Harry.
Good evening.
So why is it more inclusive to not toast to Winston Churchill, the man that stopped Hitler, one of the greatest monsters of history?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? And to be honest, I don't think that Churchill College's response to this makes any sense at all. I approached them originally for comment, as I thought I'd misheard the toast.
Yeah.
I just presumed there'd been some kind of mistake. The toast has always been to Sir Winston and the Queen since the college's foundation. And, quite frankly, I thought there must have been some kind of misunderstanding.
And it's Churchill College?
It's Churchill College. It was set up after the Second World War as a unique national memorial to Churchill.
Well, that's not going well, is it?
Well, exactly. You'd think that Churchill College, of all places, would be proud of Sir Winston and everything that he achieved. But, yeah, and indeed it was set up to honour that, but it appears that's not the case anymore.
And no politician is perfect, and Winston Churchill existed at a time when the world was a very different place, and he said things and had views that we would consider now to be, wrong or abhorrent, but the bottom line is that he existed at a time in history when those views were commonplace.
Of course, yeah.
But this was a guy of amazing moral courage who defeated this great evil of fascism. I mean, he was the ultimate anti-racist.
Of course, yeah. And yeah, as you rightly say, Churchill was far from perfect. I'm not suggesting he was perfect by any stretch. I don't think anybody is.
Some archaic views on race, among other things, but I wonder whether any aristocrats or leading politicians at the time didn't take a similar view.
Yeah, almost certainly, yeah. It's, his views were common in his day. They're not views we would share now. And as I say, nobody's saying he's perfect.
And it's all about context, isn't it?
It's all about context. And I think the main point as well is that, despite his flaws and despite his mistakes, his achievement firstly in May 1940 by standing up to Hitler and then actually winning the war throughout the years that followed, if that's not worthy of remembrance and of honouring, then I don't really know what is.
Where does this come from, this revisionist look at Churchill? What's going on?
Well, there's always been a small group, I must stress, of far-left academics who have a very anti-Churchill agenda. There's a group actually within Churchill College and within the wider university who have for many years kind of pushed that agenda.
I think they're in the wrong college, aren't they?
Well, indeed, you'd think that they should all resign their posts or leave the college if they feel so strongly. But it took particular it gained particular momentum last year after the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests. The college felt it had a kind of moral obligation to re-examine, in their words, his legacy in light of...
Maybe, I tell you what I think we should have done, right? I've never been angrier on the national broadcast. We should have just not had Churchill and let Hitler win. I think these left-wing professors who have done nothing tangible for this country other than inculcate and indoctrinate students. Yeah. So much better to let Hitler win and see what state the world would be in now.
Well, it's funny you say that, actually, because at one event the college held, one of the speakers actually directly said that Churchill led an empire that was worse than the Nazis. So he might well agree with what you've just said.
I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. I think it's... I mean, I was raised in a faith, a Catholic faith, and I would deploy the word sin for the besmirching of Churchill's legacy in this way, fully putting into context that he said and postured on things that are not appropriate now, or not de rigueur. But I think that it feels like morally wrong to actually characterise Churchill in this way, considering what he did for the human race.
Yeah, I agree. It's ungrateful is the word I'd use.
Ungrateful.
He, as I say, he saved his country.
And not just his strategic genius in terms of outwitting Hitler, but his moral inspiration that he provided to the country, the speeches on the radio, when the Blitz happened, and he was there on the ground, shaking hands with Londoners, offering hope. We will win. We will defeat evil.
Yeah.
And now a well-heeled university college named after him wants to disown him.
Yeah, I know. It completely beggars belief. And as you say, when he took over, this country was on the verge of defeat. Most people in the government and in Parliament wanted to surrender. He was the one figure who really could take the initiative and actually stop this country from surrendering and see us through the war.
I don't understand it. I'm sorry, Harry. I'm really struggling. And your article in The Spectator, by the way, fantastic. Let's bring in my panel, who I think will definitely help me. Esther, Benjamin, and Carol. Carol, I'm having a difficult moment with this. I don't understand it, and I'm really angry. What do you think?
This is a fantastic piece by Harry in The Spectator, and it made me furious beyond belief because, the people criticising Churchill these days are people who've never done anything useful in their lives. This is a man who, as you just said, Mark, whose strategy, his courage, his foresight... We kept on fighting the Nazis at a time when the rest of the government at the time didn't want to do it. That's true, isn't it, Harry? It was Churchill who said, we're going to carry on, and he made the people of this country want to carry on and fight. That's an incredible... It's just an incredible power to have over a country, isn't it, Harry?
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a good argument to say he's the one person in May 1940 who could lead the country through its darkest moments and actually see us through the Second World War and save this country from the Nazi threat and the contribution he made to this nation's history and indeed to the entire world.
I mean, we wouldn't have won the war without him, Harry, would we?
I mean, I think this is akin to, in 20, 30 years' time, South Africans not mentioning Nelson Mandela. Mm-hmm. I really do. So, don't mention Mandela now because he's problematic because of some ridiculous thing that's been excavated from the past. Benjamin, what do you think? Do you share my and Carol's anger?
I mean, in large part, I certainly, think people that have vandalised Churchill's statue in Parliament Square are wrong, and Churchill is a hero because we wouldn't be sat here without him. Yeah. That is evidently true, and I think it's a very fringe viewpoint to not think like that. But of course, he was someone who said that, in his words, I hate people with slitty eyes and pigtails. He said black people aren't as equal to white people. And the famine that happened in India that was British at the time, people were saying to him he should take action, and he said it was a distraction. And so my question is that, while I certainly think he's a hero figure, do you not think that we are denying ourselves this far after, we're denying ourselves as a country the reality to not recognise his flaws more readily?
But no one is denying that reality. And
let Harry answer that. That's important. He answers it.
Quickly, Esther.
No one is denying that reality. And I think Mark, using the example of Nelson Mandela, is actually very apt in this situation as well, because everyone sees Nelson Mandela as a hero, and he was, by a large stretch, a hero. But Nelson Mandela also had his flaws, and he was also convicted of acts of terrorism as well. So I don't think, no one is denying that. But I think to vandalise statues... I mean, look, the people that are making this argument...
That wasn't my question.
No, hold on. But the people that are making your arguments, for instance, who I'm assuming...
Well, you're not making my argument. That isn't what I said.
Hold on.
Well, how about letting Harry answer the question?
Are making your argument that I assume consider themselves quite intelligent. What they're failing to see, which is actually really quite stupid, so it's the opposite of where they see themselves, is how can you possibly judge someone by the standards of the 21st century when they didn't exist in the 21st century? It doesn't make sense. How can you judge him by the sort of the values and the character?
But again, that wasn't my argument.
No, but that is your argument, because you're saying you're judging him. Guess what? There were a lot of racist people back then. That's just the reality.
And that wasn't my argument. My argument was that you should... Are we too nervous to recognise the complexities of our heroes?
We have recognised.
And the question is to Harry, not to Esther.
Okay. Harry?
Well, I mean, nobody's saying that Churchill was perfect. And as I said, he had his flaws, he made mistakes, he said things that he wouldn't say. But I think the question is, the contribution he made to this country in 1940 and between 1940 and 45, was so immense that if we cannot bring ourselves to recognise a man who led us throughout our most challenging times, then surely that outweighs his undoubted failures and his mistakes.
But isn't it true, Harry and guys, that we do recognise the complexities of the problems he had, the difficulties he had, what he said about it? We do recognise them, but his greater achievement was winning the war and keeping us free of the Nazis.
Yes, I mean, Benjamin, he was a 19th century aristocrat. Go figure. I mean, it's actually wrong to place these figures in a modern context.
But, well, first of all, the question about the famine that happened, I think a lot of people at the time disagreed with him on that.
Which has been, by the way,
and the 3 million people who died.
Challenged by Andrew Roberts, the historian who joined me on this programme, who's written a book about Churchill, and said that's complete nonsense in relation to the famine. But in the end, you know, you'd have to take a historical view on that one. The issue is, Benjamin, whether defeating Hitler doesn't surpass all of these allegations.
Of course it surpasses all of them, without doubt. I won't say otherwise.
Do you think he deserves a toast? Does
So
he get
why
toast
is this
at his own
college
college?
ashamed of him then, if that's the case?
If I may, and sort of this is, I suppose, to actually maybe to all of you, I don't remember when I was at school ever being told of these aspects of Churchill and his behaviour. I don't remember them ever being part of history classes. So that to me says that we are very nervous to understand
naive of you, that's naive of you,
the
because
complexity of our hero.
history is written by the victors, and there is always a slant to the history we're taught. But we have evolved since. But we have evolved since then, and we talked about it.
On the other hand, I was taught this, so I don't know sort of who was teaching your history classes, but also, what evidence do you have that this aspect of Winston Churchill in our history books is being denied, actively denied? What evidence do you have of that? Nobody's denying it. I've never seen anyone denying the things that he said or done. I think we've actually had this conversation time and time again. I was perfectly aware of this. I was perfectly aware of a lot of things that he's done over the course of the 20th century. So I don't really understand your point of...
Well, as someone who went to a state secondary school, and so got the history education most people did, this wasn't something that factored in, and I suppose that's my question. If someone said Churchill had racist views, I think a lot of people would recoil at that, even though it's an accurate comment.
Well, I think maybe because the reason why it wasn't emphasised when you were being taught is because, guess what? Virtually everyone back then had racist views. So it wouldn't have made a difference. I'm sorry, that's just the reality. Virtually everyone did. And if that's uncomfortable for you, well, you're going to need to find...
I mean, Harry, what do you think is going to happen to the legacy of Churchill? Will he eventually get Tipp-Ex'd out of the British history books? I mean, what's going to happen to his legacy, do you think?
Well, I think, there's clearly an attempt by, a cynical but powerful group of people to attempt to throw dirt at Churchill and to attempt to destroy his legacy. The job of those of us who admire the man and admire his achievements is to resist that. I think luckily the majority of the British people are on our side on this. I think that most people recognise that Churchill, despite his undoubted flaws, which we've talked about, was a man who made an immense contribution to this country. So I think, as long as that remains true, his legacy will be intact, but at the same time, we must, of course, protect it from attempts to destroy it.
Do you think the college at which you attended, and they clearly did a fabulous job because you're amazingly articulate, and I really love your piece in The Spectator, and by the way, you're also a star journalist at Disruption Banking, which is a
very
top banking news website. Do you think that they will reinstate the toast? Or will they continue to cancel Churchill? I mean, might they change their name eventually? Is that the end game? Cover statues, perhaps? What do you think's what's the direction of travel at the college?
Well, I mean, certainly it does seem to be the direction of travel. It was a small change, and the master probably hoped that nobody would even notice. But once you start allowing small changes like this to happen, one thing leads to another. And you're absolutely right. You wouldn't put it past them to try and change the name in the future. But as I say, it's the job of people like us to make sure that doesn't happen.
Is this sort of wave of anti-Churchill sentiment, which I would equate, by the way, with anti-British sentiment as well? I think it's lefty academics that hate this country and everything it stands for. Do you think that it's an issue across more colleges, or is it unique to Churchill?
Well, I think Churchill College has come under particular attack, given its name and given the connotations of the name. But no, this general sentiment is certainly shared in other colleges. I've heard of some which have actually dropped the toast to the Queen, so maybe Churchill will follow suit on that as well pretty quickly. But no, there is just a general attempt to rewrite history across Cambridge colleges and to destroy each college's specific traditions. And I think that's something we need to be aware of and something we need to fight against.
Who are we going to do a toast to if we can't do the Queen or Winston Churchill? What's it going to be? Harry Styles? Ed Sheeran? Give me strength. Well, listen, Harry, I do hope you'll come back and see us. Perhaps you'd like to join our panel on a future occasion. I can get you a seat next to Carol Malone if you're very, very lucky. Or you might get Benjamin. Swings and roundabouts.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.